if we separate as an individual province or become part of the 51st state, either or. But I think we need to stand up, because if we don't stand up, we're just going to be bowled over.
Half the country didn't just raise an eyebrow. It slammed its fist on the table so hard the cracks are still spreading. Overnight, the quiet simmer of frustration turned into a political earthquake. Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, British Columbia, Quebec, and even the Yukon, yes, the territory everyone pretended didn't matter, have all stepped forward, drawn their own line in the dirt, and said exactly what Ottawa never expected to hear in unison: enough. Suddenly, the phrase 51st to 56th states isn't a meme or a hypothetical. It's becoming a geographic possibility that has the federal government pacing the floors in panic. Ottawa is stunned. Ontario is scrambling. And the West? The West has stopped asking permission. For decades, Canada's political tensions were a polite disagreement. A raised voice here, a stern letter there. But this isn't that. This isn't a debate about tweaks or reform. This is a full-scale realignment of borders, power, identity, and loyalty.
The country has lost out on tens of billions of dollars in investment and countless opportunities for growth. Alberta won't pay that price again. We have no obligation to accept policies or agreements that hold our people back.
A reshape of the map that Canada can't stop, delay, or spin. The numbers alone tell the story. Alberta watched $20 billion leave the province every single year through equalization. Since the 1970s, around $600 billion drained away, applauded by bureaucrats who laughed at the very people writing those checks. You work, you produce, you build, and you get punished for it. That isn't federation. That's colonial accounting dressed up in modern branding. Canada has missed out on tens of billions in investment. Entire industries stalled. Opportunities evaporated. And Alberta, the economic engine, was told to clap while its fuel was siphoned out. But the province is done paying that bill. Danielle Smith didn't blink, didn't hesitate, didn't apologize. The Sovereignty Act of 2022 gave Alberta the legal muscle to refuse federal policies targeting its jurisdiction. Then came the International Agreements Act of 2025, quietly locking in another layer of independence. Two legislative blades drawn clean, sharp, and ready. And Ottawa is pretending they're made of rubber. The mood across the prairies isn't anger anymore. It's exhaustion sharpened into discipline. Walk through any small town where pipelines once hummed like lifelines, and you'll hear the same tone. People aren't wondering if they can leave. They're calculating how. Alberta turned sovereignty from a political dream into literal operational paperwork. And bureaucracy, ironically, has become the weapon Ottawa can't fight. At rallies, people like Colin Kuma lay it out. Equalization siphons the West. Environmental laws kneecap its industries. And federal leadership treats the region like a guilty party at its own success story. Saskatchewan watched all this and said, "Fine, us too." They photocopied Alberta's playbook, laminated it, and passed the Saskatchewan First Act in 2023, reclaiming land, water, resources, and minerals. Premier Scott Moe didn't bother pretending to be diplomatic. He said the quiet part loudly. If people vote for independence, the government won't stop them. That line didn't sound rebellious. It sounded like self-respect.
Point towards the viability of an independent Alberta. And that's the situation right now. And whether it stays as an independent, autonomous province or whether it joins the United States, these are things that were at one time unthinkable, just couldn't happen. But they are now entirely possible because of the breakdown in Canada as we used to know it and the authoritarian style.
And here's the twist. 10 years ago, only 15% of Saskatchewan residents supported separation. Today, polls swing between 40% and 45%. Nearly half a province is openly considering a new border. And when you look at the economics, why wouldn't they? Uranium, potash, agriculture, their biggest customers are already in the United States. Their rail lines, shipping routes, energy corridors, they point south. On paper, Saskatchewan operates more like an unofficial Midwestern state than a Canadian province. Alberta sees the math. Saskatchewan feels it. And now, the question isn't, is independence possible? It's, which version happens first? Texas-style independence or full statehood? Meanwhile, everyone was staring at Alberta and Saskatchewan, while British Columbia quietly cracked in half. BC should have been the West's Pacific crown. Instead, it became Ottawa's favorite blockade experiment. Northern Gateway gone. Trans Mountain delayed to death. Billions in investor money evaporated, while Eastern politicians smiled and called it environmental leadership. Try selling that line to families in Terrace, Kamloops, or Fort St. John, towns where resource workers now lean toward Alberta's message. If we can't ship east, we'll ship south. People like 38-year-old Katrina Baker don't speak in metaphors anymore. I wish Alberta could stay part of Canada, but nothing's going to change. And with current leadership, it's getting worse. The interior and the coast don't speak the same political language now. One votes for identity, the other votes for survival. Federal tanker bans and carbon taxes sliced BC clean in half. Up to 1/3 of interior and northern residents say they're open to joining a Western alliance or partnering with the U.S. directly. 1 in 3 ready to cross the line. They're tired of asking permission from the same departments that treat their livelihood like contraband. Ottawa turned BC's inland towns into collateral for climate branding, so people are ready to cash out of Confederation. Then there's Manitoba, the quiet observer turned reluctant rebel.
To stand up for this province, protect our freedoms, and chart our own path forward. The Constitution is clear. Provinces have authority over matters within their jurisdiction, and that authority cannot be signed away by Ottawa. That's why we are taking the next step to defend Alberta's constitutional rights through Bill 1.
For years, the province played it safe, believing moderation could buy influence. But inflation skyrocketed. Groceries jumped, energy costs surged, and Ottawa still treated Manitoba like background scenery. Ottawa only listens when you threaten to take away its control. The statistics are ruthless. The West produces, the East consumes, and the middle funds the gap while being scolded about gratitude. So the next phase won't be protests or slogans. It'll be referendums, legal filings, constitutional maneuvers, paperwork, signatures, the quiet weapons that Ottawa has the hardest time stopping. And just when the federal government thought the rebellion couldn't spread further, the Yukon, the territory Ottawa always assumed was too small, too far, too frozen to matter, stepped forward. Only 45,000 people live there, scattered across a territory larger than California. Yet Ottawa treats them like a mascot on a map. But what Ottawa calls isolation, the Yukon calls leverage. It sits at the Northern Gateway, the Arctic choke point every global superpower watches for energy routes and military positioning. Then came 2025. The Yukon built its own health authority, Shah Nithan Wellness, the first in its history. 7 local board members chosen to replace federal mismanagement with territorial control. That wasn't healthcare reform. That was administrative rebellion. When a territory starts building parallel government, it's already halfway out the door. Ottawa didn't recognize the alarm until the ink had dried, and by then, the Yukon wasn't hinting anymore. It was declaring the one sentence the federal government never expected from the North.
Many Albertans and Western Canadians are expressing frustration and anger, feeling used and left out of the decision-making process.
We don't trust you anymore. The cost of living there is borderline dystopian. $2,000 rent in Whitehorse, another $600 a month just to not freeze. Families juggling 2 jobs to stay alive in a place that powers the national identity, but never sees the benefits. Independence isn't a chant in the Yukon, it's a survival plan. And then there's Quebec, the country within a country. The province that once threatened independence for cultural identity has accidentally become the legal blueprint for everyone else threatening independence for economic survival. Immigration control, tax autonomy, administrative power. Quebec pushed for it all, and Ottawa rewarded them. The West is now reading Quebec's playbook, like a manual. And every year, $13 billion in equalization, much of it generated from Alberta and Saskatchewan, flows into Quebec's budget. The West drills, Quebec collects, Ottawa nods, and somehow they call that unity. So when people in Calgary and Regina demand the same leverage, they're not fantasizing. They're following precedent. The map is changing. The numbers say so. The people say so. The silence from Ottawa says so. And the only question left is how long the Federation can pretend the cracks are shadows. If you want to follow this unfolding political drama as the ground shifts beneath Canada, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because this story is only getting louder.